Welcome, everybody, to today's show. We have an awesome guest, as usual, Mr. David Dodge. We actually have a lot of similarities in common. He's been in the business for 18 years, done about 750 transactions. He's going to talk a lot about Brrrr today. I'm burring a lot of freaking properties right now, so this is going to be great conversation. And the cool thing is that he is cash flowing $20K a month on his portfolio. So a lot of you guys are probably looking to build up passive cash flow. And so we're going to talk to David how he has been able to do that.
Welcome to the Real Estate Masters Podcast, where we interview the top names in the real estate game.
Like I said, you can turn a lot of those so-called negatives into positives.
If you don't know what you're doing, you miss a piece, they're going to come back to you, and it becomes harder, right?
What's up, David?
Hey, Tony. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, man. You said you're there at your lake house, which is cool. Thanks for joining us while you're on a little, looks like a little vacay. So
yeah, buddy, man. I am getting ready to take the boat out, and I'm going to pop a high noon in the meantime. So hopefully that's okay.
There you go, man. That's the first beer we've had. That's a beer, right?
Yeah, it's like a seltzer type of thing.
Okay. First drink we've had on our show. So there.
Oh man, you guys got to have more drinks.
Evidently. if we're like what's his name, Joe Rogan, we'd have more stuff on here, but we're not quite to that level yet. So, well, good stuff, man. So first of all, everybody who's listening, please do me a favor, subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know if you have any questions, any good takeaways, any nuggets. Anything that you can share based on what we talk about today that'll inspire us to get more guests on the show and continue to add value to you guys. So David, start with your story, man. Just take us 18 years back and take us all the way to today.
All right. I'll try to keep it quick because I tend to talk a lot. I'm going to warn you. So just feel free to interrupt me, Tony. So yeah, started about 18 years ago. I'm 37. I started at the age of 20. I'm coming on 38. So about 18 years, give or take. At 20, I did house hacking. I was in college, didn't have a bunch of money at all. I was broke. I was delivering pizzas and working at restaurants, and had a course in college that was all about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. How cool is that? I don't even know what the name of the class was. It obviously
wasn't class?
A college class
no
at
kidding.
Mizzou. Yeah, and it wasn't named Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I want to say it was like Personal Finance 101 or something like that, right? Very entry level. I was a freshman. And my teacher was a landlord, and he would donate his check every month to charity. He's like, I don't need the check from the university. I make plenty of money off my rentals. And I was like, man, I'm hooked. So I just read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and decided I want to get into real estate. I did it wrong for the first 10 years. But in hindsight, looking back, I'm happy that I did it wrong because I was able to acquire rentals, but I also know now what not to do and what to do. And we'll get into that. But basically, yeah, did that 3 times, Tony, in college. Bought a house, rented out 3 or 4 of the additional bedrooms, basically lived for free. And then all through my 20s, I basically bought a house a year. And at the end of my 20s, that's, full 10 years, I think I owned 12 houses. So I got lucky 2 years out of 10, and I was able to buy 2. Versus 1. But what I want to talk about real quickly was why I did it wrong or how I did it wrong. And what I did back then was, I would say, hey, I want to buy a property, right? So I would find a local agent to then help me search the MLS for properties that were for sale, find a property that I liked, make an offer on that property, negotiate a little bit, get it accepted, and then go walk into a bank and get a loan. Well, banks aren't doing 100% loans, for me at least. So I would get an 80% loan, I'd put down 20%. And the average price point of the houses I was buying in my 20s were 150,000. 20% of that is $30K. And the first 3 or 4 I bought, I didn't even have the $30K. I borrowed that from friends and family and acquaintances and used that as my down payment and got a bank loan. And then I'd pay them off over like a year or 2 or 3 or whatever, right? And then after college, I had a job, and that was really just a way for me to park cash. I'm not very good at saving money. I never have been, but I am addicted to investing. So it kind of works out really well because if I have an extra 20 or 30 grand laying around, it's burning a hole in my pocket. And I'm like, I just got to go buy a property and tie this money up so I don't, do something stupid with it. Then that's really the truth right there. So yeah, that's my story for the most part. And then at the age of 30, Tony, I hired a coach. I wanted to get into real estate full time. So all through my 20s, I was doing odds and ends jobs, working sales and marketing and little bit of travel. I was an entrepreneur for probably 6 years of those 10, online businesses selling products and services and websites and just all types of random stuff. But I was just kind of over that. And at the age of 30, I was like, you know what? I want to get into real estate, but I don't really want to be an agent. And so I just started reading and listening to podcasts just like this and going to different RIAs. And I hired a coach. And he essentially helped me get my first couple wholesale deals. And for the next 3.5 years, I didn't do anything but wholesale. And I actually lost track of buying rentals. I was just caught in this transaction treadmill. And I was making decent money wholesaling and I was having fun and I built a team. But at the end of the day, I lost sight. So about, 4.5 years ago, give or take, I woke up one day and I'm like, man, this is not why I got into real estate, to just work my butt off. I got into real estate at the age of 20 because I wanted to be like the professor who, could give his time to the university and to the students and not even need the money. That's amazing, right? So I decided, all right, I need to pivot back to buying rentals. And for the first year, we were still leaving anywhere from 15 to 20 grand in a property, after we refinanced it. We weren't very good at the Brrrr Method, basically. Mm-hmm. And, the next year we got that down to maybe, 8, 10, 12. And then the next year we got it down to about 5. And over the last 2 years, we've averaged $1,200 left into a property at refi. So what that means is, after a couple months cash flow, you don't have any of your own money invested into that asset. So that's what I love about the Brrrr Method, guys, is that we can use earned equity. We can use the equity that we capture from buying at a discount, as well as the forced appreciation from the rehab to capture the equity. The big difference between what I did in the past and what I do now, obviously, I'm not going to an agent first and looking on the MLS. I'm finding discounted deals. That's part one. But part two is I'm not using the local banks and credit unions to purchase properties anymore. I'm only using the local banks and credit unions. And there's even some national guys as well now that I'm working with, but I use them to refinance. When you go and you use a bank to purchase, unless you get really creative, and we've done a couple, creative deals like this, but typically speaking, when you go to a bank for a purchase, they want 20% down. When you go to a bank for a refinance, the purchase price is irrelevant. What matters now is what it appraises for and how much you owe on it. And that was the game changer for me, Tony. So obviously you're into Brrrr. I'm assuming you've talked to your audience quite a bit about it. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. That's what Brrrr is. Some people call it Brrrs, and they just replace that last R for repeat with scale. It's the same thing at the end of the day. But let's elaborate on that real quick, Tony. Buy. You got to buy at a discount. You know that. I hope the audience does too. If not, very, very important. We're buying at a discount every single time. I think last year we bought 162 properties, Tony, and I think 3 of them were on the MLS. And the only reason we bought those 3 is because the agent that had the listing knew the seller was motivated. It was sitting on the market and they reached out to us and said, make an offer. But we don't go to the MLS to look for deals. It's all off market. So that's the
you know what's interesting? Back in, I can't remember what the year was. I think it was 2016 or 17. We bought half of our properties off the MLS.
Wow.
And overnight, it went from, what was that? 30 some properties we bought, because all we do is rehab. We went from 30 some properties on the MLS to 3 the next year. I mean, that's how quickly the MLS dried up, and it's pretty much been that way for the last 5 years.
Yeah, we got creative about that same time, and we were buying some then. But for the most part, it's all off market, and we're going direct to seller, and we're using creative marketing to get direct to seller, and that's really what it comes down to. And then from there, we get a discount. So all investors do is trade convenience for a discount. That's all we really do at the end of the day. The more convenience that I can offer to a seller, the more that they're going to be willing to leave a little money on the table and give me a discount. In fact, people love selling me houses, and I'm sure they love selling you houses, and they know they're leaving money on the table. But we come and we offer so much convenience to them. And really the convenience, in my opinion, boils down to 3 things. The 80-20 principle. Well, I think 3 things make up the 80%. Cash, quick, as is. Simple. That's lesson 101, right? So we're offering cash, we're closing relatively fast, and that's a relative term, 3 to 4 4 weeks, not 3 to 4 months. We can do it quicker, but usually that's about the time frame. And then as is, we're not requiring people to fix, paint, clean. We bought one the other day. It's going to need 5 or 6 dumpsters just to be hauled off. No problem. We factored in about 9 or 10,000, and it is what it is. But they just wanted to walk away. So buy at a discount. Very, very important. The rehab is one of my favorite things about the Brrrr Method, Tony, because I'm not adding properties to my portfolio that need a bunch of work or will need a bunch of work in the immediate future. That's what I really love about the Brrrr Method. I'm adding properties to the portfolio that have new roofs, new HVACs, new flooring, new water heaters, maybe new windows, typically a new kitchen. We typically spend 25 to 30 grand on average when we're doing a Brrrr deal. And there's a couple of reasons. Number one, we like to add properties to the portfolio that don't need a bunch of work. But number two, in order for banks to lend on the appraisal, and the appraisal only on a refi, and they know that you're burring it, they typically have a minimum, and they refer to this. Every bank actually has a different name for it, but the main banker that I use, he refers to it as the entrepreneurial credit. And he basically says, hey, Dave, I don't care what you paid for this property, but I'm not going to refinance it and give you an 80% loan on it unless you fix it up. Because what that does for the bank, if you put yourself in the banker's shoes, it mitigates their risk. If we don't pay the mortgage, which we've never not done, but in the event that we didn't, and the bank has to take that property back and foreclose on us, it's going to be relatively easy, if not easy, for them to be able to unload a property that's got all new finishes, right? So by doing the rehab, you get to, you earn that entrepreneur credit. You get to add properties to the portfolio that, have updates. And, really what we try to do is we try to mitigate the capital expenditures for the next 7 to 10 years. It doesn't always work that way, but ideally speaking, I don't want to have to go into the property and spend, more than 5 or 10,000, hopefully for 7 to 10 years. So it's nice to knock all that big stuff out of the way. The rehab also does 2 additional things. It allows you to get a higher value of the property, which helps your appraisal, and it also helps you get higher rent. So it just makes sense for us to rehab properties before we rent them, because we're able to use financing with the refinance. Based on the appraisal, we're able to get a higher value, and we're able to charge the best rent in the area. I mean, we're often setting rent records because our houses are way better than the competition.
Especially these days, like we've got properties we bought a year and a half ago that rented for, let's say, $1,200 a year and a half ago, and now they're renting for $1,400 to $1,500, right?
It's awesome.
I'm not saying this is going to continue to happen, but right now with property values going up, rents are going up, and it's just a perfect time to Brrrr. And I'll keep this story short because I want you to continue. But I just put a Facebook post out, I think a couple of days ago, about 3 properties I just refinanced, and they ended up appraising collectively. All 3 appraised for, I want to say it was like more than $150,000.
I saw that post.
Over.
That was cool.
What I thought they were going to when we first bought them. So that allowed us to get over $100,000 cash back. Normally it would have been like even, we might have gotten some money back out of that. But we got over $100,000 tax-free.
Tax-free.
Right?
That's not income, that's debt.
Tax-free, right? On top of that, we were able to take the renovations, and you may be getting into this, but like the renovations we put into the property, because of accelerated or bonus depreciation, we can write off most of those renovations in the first year. So I can't remember what the math was. I think it was like around 150,000 in renovations. So if I'm in California, so if I'm saving 50% on taxes, that's about $75,000 in tax saving.
Yep.
So if you do the math on it, really, if you buy the properties really right, and you maximize the value on the rehab and you get really good appraisals, you can actually get as much, if not more money back doing the Brrrr as you would selling the property and then paying taxes on that. And you have all of this equity built in, right?
Absolutely. And Tony, I think a lot of people, they have the goal every day when they wake up to, either go to their job or, go to their business and make more money. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, typically people want to make more money, right? Well, there's a big difference between creating income and creating wealth. The IRS tax code is, I think, 96,000 pages, and only 3 or 4 of those pages tell you when, how, and where to pay. The rest of those tax pages are loopholes and ways to defer and deter. So real estate is such a great way to eliminate, avoid, reduce, all 3 in some cases, taxes. So my goal every day when I wake up isn't necessarily to make more income, because yeah, I get to put more in my personal checking account, but so does Uncle Sam. And I don't like paying taxes. You just brought that up. And whenever you do the Brrrr method and you acquire a property with little to no money, ideally 0 out of pocket, right? The goal is typically no money, and you have $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of equity, that's not taxed. That wealth that you just created or that we create is tax-free. When we sell that property and we create an income incident, then we'll have to pay taxes.
Unless you 1031 exchange.
Unless you 1031, my friend. Yes, I love it. I love it. But that equity that we captured, that's wealth, and it's non-taxed. And we can borrow against that equity like you just told me in your story here. Amazing. Real estate is awesome. I love it. And the Brrrr method is by far my favorite strategy when it comes to investing in real estate. So B, buy at a discount. The first R, rehab. I gave you 4 or 5 examples of why rehab is important and, super beneficial. The next step is to rent. And you can do this yourself. You can hire a property manager. I have 3 different property managers for my properties. I don't like dealing with the people. I like dealing with the property. So I let somebody else do that. And then the next R is refinance. And we talked a little bit about the refinance. I love working with local banks and credit unions because I can walk in, I can meet the vice president of the bank. They'll give me their cell phone number in most cases. And I'm not bouncing from a call center in Seattle to a call center in Phoenix to a call center in the Philippines to try to get my paperwork to the processing department. I just hand deliver it to the guy down the street at the bank. Love the local banks. Also, the local banks are going to typically lend on what's called portfolio loans or portfolio lending, which means they're going to keep those loans in-house. They're not going to take them to Wall Street and sell them off in the secondary market. So there's a couple advantages of using the local banks. We have started working with a couple national hard money lenders that will originate a 30-year fixed note and then sell that off. Pros and cons. Closing costs are double. You have a prepayment penalty typically for 3 to 5 years. But in today's economy and market with these interest rates going up, we've started doing that to quite a few. I think we've maybe done 10 or 12 this year on 30-year fixed. And we have a long-term mindset on these. So the prepayment penalties doesn't bother me at all, but that's basically, Brrrr 101 right there. You got to buy at a discount. That's the most important thing. So the goal to do this with little to no money is to capture equity and use that as your skin in the game. So how do I buy properties with little to no money? I skipped over this. I borrow from hard and private money lenders to actually take the property down, purchase it, put it in my name. I never use my own money and I never use banks. I don't like to use banks because, again, they're going to want that 20%. I never use my own money because if the bank sees money coming back to me at refi, they're going to typically look at that as a cash out, even though I'm not really cashing out. I like to get rate and term refis. So what I like to do is borrow 100% of the money. I like to borrow the rehab and the purchase, and often I'll borrow an additional 5, 10, or 20,000 on top. Reason is again, banks don't like to typically do the cash out. They'll do them, but they're going to give you a little higher rate and they're going to give you a 70 or 75% loan versus an 80% loan. So we can still cash out. We just do it on the front. So let's say I borrow an additional 20, but I got to bring, let's say $8,000 to close. Well, I've already borrowed that 20. I give 8 of it back to close. And now I've cashed out 12,000, but I did it 3 months ago. So there's still ways of doing cash out refis without doing it on the back end. Pro tip. So that's basically, how we're able to do it, Tony. I love the Brrrr method. I love rental properties. I've wholesaled about 700 houses to date. Wholesaling is a great way to get in the game, especially if you don't have a ton of money. But wholesaling to me is a means to an end. It is really just marketing. And I kind of group wholesaling and marketing together. I don't know why I do that, but I do. We market to find deals. And then if it makes sense and it fits our buy box, we keep it. We'll keep it for a rental and we'll burr it, or we'll fix it and we'll flip it. If it doesn't meet our buy box, we'll wholesale it. So we have a simple saying, keep the best, wholesale the rest. Super simple. And, it just goes really well. So we market and we use all the strategies that you're going to learn as a marketer and as a wholesaler to get into good deals. And then from there, again, if they meet the buy box, we'll take them down and keep them.
Good stuff, David. Yeah, the first, I'll kind of add on to the Brrrr of how powerful it is. I started, what year did you say you started? 2000?
It was 2003.
Okay, so I started 2001. I was in college and 21 years old. Was I 20 or 21? Oh gosh, I think I was 20 and then I turned 21 before I bought my first property. But any which way, I was 21 when I bought my first property, and I kept my first, it was at least 10 properties. It might've been 12. And I did the Brrrr on my first 10. So like, I feel like I invented the Brrrr. Maybe I did.
Nice.
But any which way, I had.
How'd you buy it? What was your way of getting into it? Did you refinance it? Is that how you heard it? Or?
So the first property I ever bought, Wells Fargo at the time was looking at the after repair value and giving you the full amount of the after repair value. They would only fund the purchase up front. So they wouldn't give you any cash back at that point. They would fund the rehab. They would do the final inspection. And then if you had money left over, they would just give you the money. So the first property I bought.
Is that a 201(3)B or something like that, or no?
No, it wasn't. It's similar, I think, to what you're talking about. But I was able to pocket, it was somewhere between 10 and 20 grand. I think I estimated 20 and it ended up being less than that. Somewhere between 10 and 20 grand.
That's awesome. That was your first one?
21 years old. Pocketed.
Holy cow, you were hooked at that point.
Dude, totally. And then, so to be able to do that from 21 to 22 or 23, it took me a year to 2 years to get those 10 properties. Had a net worth of several $100,000 at 23 years old. I mean, where else can you do that? Right. And then I'd actually bought a property subject to, it was actually my aunt's house and she just didn't take care of it and she wanted to sell it. And I'm like, hey, I'll buy it. I'll take over the mortgage. And I ended up refinancing it 2 years later after I did a little bit of work to it, rented it for a while and got $35,000 cash back, tax free. And I just finally sold that like last year, I think. But it is so powerful, like to be able to add something like that to your arsenal, because if you can flip, if you can wholesale, and you can Brrrr properties, like being able to do all of those just allows you to do so many more deals.
Absolutely, it does.
Right now, can't remember if I mentioned it earlier, I'm Brrrring pretty much everything I do in my main market of Wichita, Kansas. We're running TV in other markets. We're wholesaling and flipping and doing other stuff. My main market where I started 20 years ago, unless it's like a $400,000 plus house, which is expensive in Wichita, we're keeping everything. Rents are going up.
We try to do the same.
Prices are going up, and the taxes alone, the tax savings alone make it worth it.
Yeah, the depreciation is a huge bonus. You got the cash flow. I mean, you get to make money while you sleep. Rentals are, I mean, I love it. It's the easiest way to create passive income for most people. And it's really not that hard. A lot of people will start with wholesaling. I actually started with rentals. And, I want to definitely highlight that, if you don't want to be a wholesaler, I know a lot of people that they don't want to build a big marketing engine and hire virtual assistants or local assistants and have a team. And, they don't want to wholesale. They're just not interested in it, but they want to own rentals. And you don't have to be a wholesaler to own rentals. You can start with rentals. So I love that. And speaking of doing cash outs, we did a small commercial building. It's like a little strip center. It only has 4 tenants in it, but we Brrr'd it and walked away with $53,000. Did that about 4 months ago. Beautiful. And we bought it at a steal of a deal. We only put about maybe 15 or 20 grand into painting the exterior of the building and patching the roof. And then we raised the rents, took it to the bank. They saw that we had done some work. And they said, we'll give you 75% of what it appraises for, because it wasn't the nicest neighborhood. We said 75% works for us. And we walked with 53 grand. So you can, the last point I want to make here is you can get paid to buy rental properties. Tony just gave you guys a couple examples. I did one, for 53. I did one last week where I walked with about 5 grand. I think it was 48 or 4,900. Not a home run, but I acquired an asset that was fully rehabbed and it's getting market rate rent or above. No immediate capital expenditures, hopefully and ideally for the next 7 to 10 years. And I walked out of closing with 5 grand, paid back the lender, interest, all the above. Closing, everything was rolled in. So that's that is the magic with the Brrrr method. You can actually get paid to buy rental properties. I love it, man.
Absolutely. Good stuff, man. Well, hey, I know you teach people the Brrrr method. You do a lot of stuff with Brrrr. Tell people where they can get a hold of you so that if they want to learn more about Brrrr, they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my passion at this point. I spend the greater of 2 days a week just helping my students out. And if you guys want to learn more about me, about Brrrr and or, my coaching group, check out wholesalinginc.com/rentals. Again, that's wholesalinginc.com/rentals. And I encourage you to book a call and, have a conversation with, one of my team members or even me. And, let's talk about how we can get you some passive income. I mean, most people's goal at the end of the day is they want to be able to quit their job, and they think that their goal is financial freedom. But really, most people's goal is time freedom. It's very difficult to create time freedom if you don't have financial freedom. And that's what rental properties will do. They'll give you financial freedom to where you can then have the time freedom. And I'm literally getting ready to go jump in my boat and go fishing. I don't have to report to the office. So rentals are the key. They will help you exit that job that you probably hate. Tony, thanks for having me on your show today, man.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Again, go to wholesalinginc.com/rentals. Check out Dave's program. Please, guys, subscribe, leave some comments. I'd love to hear what you guys thought about today's episode. If you have questions, put them down in the box and we'll try and answer those for you. And if I can't answer it, then I'll get with Dave to see if he's got answers for you. But yeah, we appreciate it, David, and keep doing what you're doing, man. I love connecting, and we're part of a mastermind together. So I'll probably see you here in the next couple of months, and we'll keep cranking away, man.
Hey, thanks, Tony. I really appreciate your time, and I'm really grateful to get this opportunity to provide some value to your audience.
Sounds good, man. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.